Hello everyone, welcome. Just starting a 15-minute timer so I can more easily keep track of time. We are going to be talking about Elon Musk. We're going to be discussing all the cool things that Elon has been doing in the world, and we're going to be maybe adding a couple of points of challenge to the conversation as well, because it's really important to be willing to have the tough conversations around certain philosophies, around certain ethics, around certain ways that we're going to be progressing forward as a civilization, because there's not really enough of it that's currently happening. All right, so let's start off with kind of a lot of what's in the news today. A lot of what's in the news is the Boring Company. So this is something that is really important because people hate traffic, people hate stress from traffic, and people want to go from point A to point B faster. There's a couple things that come to mind when I think about this. First is that I'm not sure if digging holes underground is better than vertical takeoff and landing, aka VTOL. I'm not quite sold on it yet, and one of the reasons why is because the tunnels can't move at all. The tunnel's dug once, the vacuum tube's thrown through it, and then you can't actually move that tunnel in a different direction, and that it's just static forever, that tunnel. Versus VTOL, you take off, you go wherever you want. It's more difficult, obviously, requires a lot of energy. It requires a huge amount of federal aviation guidelines. You got to figure out how, what exact heights that different VTOLs are going to be flying at. So now that's a good question, is it actually worth it to spend millions and billions of dollars building out this infrastructure? Same thing goes for Hyperloop, by the way. Hyperloop from SF to LA, okay, what about VTOL? What about just making flying easier? It's an hour and a half to fly. So I'm not quite sure if we need all this infrastructure that we're building. Maybe we're not thinking far enough advanced. Maybe we haven't calculated all of the different, I want to say Elon's extremely intelligent and his team is extremely intelligent to the point where they've calculated all of the different ways that they can engineer and design these different solutions to transportation. But at the same time, it almost seems as though, why are we picking something like tunnels underground rather than investing a lot of interest in vertical takeoff and landing, or in making it easier to just fly from place to place? So I think we got a little bit of skepticism there. I think it's healthy skepticism in terms of transportation. And overall, I think the general idea of fixing transits is crucial. But one more aspect of that I think is really important is location agnosticism is now becoming more and more popular. Meaning, especially with technologies like virtual reality and these haptic feedback suits, you can get immersed into an environment that looks just like somewhere that's 10 hours, 20 hours away, even by flight. And just like that, versus needing to actually fly there, or go by Hyperloop or Boring or wherever there. So with location agnosticism, I actually don't know how important it's going to be to need to transit from point A to point B as much, and people will desire to move next to their homes more in the future, work next to their homes, or in their homes, work either next to or in their homes, rather than an hour or 2 hour drive away from work. That's really, really bad for a daily commute. So that's the first thing. Now, a piggyback on transit is the electric cars. Teslas are great. Teslas are really important to electrify the way that we transit. Shenzhen just pushed out 15,000 electric buses onto their streets. There's like 50 electric car companies in China. So this is really important that we start getting this right and pushing towards electrification. But how exactly are we doing that? Because the supercharger grid is a great idea, and being able to go and drive across the country and supercharge really quickly, or even just go into your house at night, plug in. So let's talk a bit about the tiles, and then we'll talk about where the actual energy comes from. Because If the energy is coming from the tiles on the roof, solar tiles, and then that's powering a generator at home, and that generator is storing the energy for you to use at a later time in your car, then that actually makes sense because you're using solar and you're not burning fossil fuels, versus if you're just burning coal and gas in order to power the Tesla that's electric, it almost doesn't even make that much sense. Why wouldn't you just burn gasoline for oil? Why wouldn't you just do that instead? And what exactly are the costs of those things? So we're not actually very familiar with those costs, and we need to figure them out better, or at least publish studies about them and figure that out. So if you're getting energy from your roof and you're driving your car, that sounds like a very ideal situation, and storing it in that generator for use in your house as well during the evening when there is no solar energy. Wow, sounds really great. Really, that's something to applaud, is that whole ecosystem at home. Solar energy, power at night, power the car, that's all really great ecosystem. I remember posting about that like 2 years ago, about how that's a really great ecosystem there for every home. Now, okay, so that's about solar and about energy. Now, what about electrification of cars and trucks? And what do we do with the batteries that are left over? Okay, so we make a bunch of electric trucks. They're the ones driving goods around. Do we really need trucks in the future that are moving goods around on the streets? Or can we throw them in VTOL, in vertical takeoff and landing drones, and ship them across the different locations as well? Of course, it can't carry as much, but maybe it's just more efficient. Who knows? We need to actually study these things and figure them out in more detail. So, what are we going to do with these batteries? Right now, I haven't had really good answers besides recycle. Okay, so you use a battery for 10 years, lithium-ion battery inside of a Tesla or truck or car, or a generator inside of your house. And then what occurs with the battery afterward? What do we do with it? It gets recycled. Okay, what do we do with the recycled parts? Where do they go? So as we make things, we got to know what happens after 10 years, because we don't want them to end up in landfills, and we also just want to figure out this whole process in general a little bit better, to be like, this is what the ecosystem looks like for the battery after 10 years. This is what parts go where. This is how, if any of the parts actually have any environmental issues. We need to know all this information. We need to be talking about it more and figuring it out. And I thought it was really interesting that there was a issue that was at the Tesla plant where they had over-automated some of the things that were going on at Tesla. I thought that was interesting because most people talk about over-automation as not something that's typically an issue. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that humans need to still be a part of the equation, and a really good way to understand that is to look at the Tesla, what happened there, and be like, okay, over-automation is actually a problem at times. We need humans in the equation, otherwise we may have some issues. Imagine in healthcare where there's over-automation, or in autonomous vehicles, over-automation. So we need to be careful as we transition to make sure we don't put human lives at risk as we transition. So if we can figure out how to really make sure that we're transitioning to robotics, artificial intelligence, and automation in a way that is safe, and in a way that is secure, in a way that is for everyone, then that's great. But if we're starting to hurt people along the way, or hurt like we experienced with the Tesla line, I don't know the exact nuances of it, but that's a really good example of humans need to be in the loop, because you can over-automate things and then things can go wrong. Maybe one day in the future, that won't be a problem, that we can just over-automate everything and then it won't even be a problem. It's better than having humans in the loop. But for now, humans need to be in the loop in a lot of things. So last point about the skepticism with electrification, and then we'll move on. Okay, so skepticism with VTOL versus boring. Then skepticism with electrification based on where are we getting the energy from and also what are we doing with the battery. And last is, I still don't understand why we're not investing more of our time and money and resources into nuclear energy. Because fusing atoms in things like the Tokamak reactor and being able to bridge the strong nuclear force and get through it and then use less energy to fuse atoms than we get out of it, that is actually a sustainable, forever source of energy for the future. We just need to figure out how to do it. So I still think that if we can figure out how to fuse atoms, that VTOL and that any other way of transit will actually be super duper powerful. So I'm just interested about exactly why we're not doing that as well. Well, we are, but we're not investing enough of our energy into it. We're still investing our time into more so other forms of energy. So, all right. Another aspect about boring that I just quickly want to touch on is what's up with this flamethrower? Because the playfulness of a flamethrower is kind of funny, right? Because you're like, cool, let's buy a flamethrower and let's go outside and just click the button and watch a big ball of fire fly out the front, and let's hold it for a bit and watch it and just like have that be fun. Let's go burn paper or burn whatever you want to burn on the street, a little patch of grass, whatever you want to do. But it can get dangerous really quickly, not only with people using it to hurt or kill other people, but also to burn buildings down and stuff. A flamethrower it's kind of getting close. It's like probably above a knife in terms of how dangerous it is and below a gun. So it's like, if Elon started saying, I'm going to make knives or I'm going to make katanas or swords or whatever, people would be a little skeptical. I'm sure people are a little skeptical about the flamethrower. I get it's supposed to be like funny and stuff, but instead of a flamethrower, why not make something that's a little bit more, I guess, educational or important? But okay, so that's that. I understand the importance of having fun for sure, but I don't know exactly if this is the right way to do it. So moving on, so we talked about boring, we talked about Tesla. Now let's talk about Neuralink and OpenAI. So these are, of course, crucial things for us to figure out. So we have both brain-computer interfaces with Neuralink, and then we have OpenAI to figure out how to make AI friendly and work together with the human race. So with Neuralink, I'm not quite sure how many people are going to just openly just take a neural prosthetic and jam it into their brain and just trust that they're not going to be manipulated in some way. Now, that being said, I think it's important for us to figure it out because I think brain-computer interfaces are definitely going to happen in the future. Almost certainly are going to happen, pretty much, unless an asteroid hits us or we fall to nuclear war. But almost certainly brain-computer interfaces are going to happen. So we should figure that out. But how are we going to bridge the ethics and the philosophy of whoever's making the Neuralink or whoever's making the brain-computer interface? So we basically have to put all of our trust into whoever is building it to believe that they are a benevolent, benign character and that they care a lot about humans and not as much about just rampantly driving their own selves profit and wanting to control and dominate other people, megalomaniacs. So we got to be a little bit careful in that sense. And that one's especially important with people that are jamming neural prosthetics into my brain, that they're very non-psychopathic. That's very important. So eradicating things like disease, though, like neurological disease, crucial. So this is where brain-computer interfaces are fantastic. Figuring out how to actually eradicate disease, brain disease from people's lives is really important. And humans have a bunch of different examples of motor diseases or of visual diseases, like macular diseases, or tons of other sort of ways that are impeding our way of having really strong mental health. And so fixing that with BCIs is a crucial part of our future. Our 15-minute timer ran out. I'm going to flip it one more time, so I'll be done by the time this timer goes back. So we'll be closing the video before 30 minutes is done. Now with OpenAI, I think that this is, again, very, very important initiative, right? I think Elon's partly doing OpenAI and Neuralink so that way people can see that, hey, I think it's important to get people together to understand that this is where we're going in the future, and that if we have the right ethicists and philosophers working together with programmers, I think we can really figure out how to make a friendly AIs. And you know, companies that are focused on friendly AI aren't as sexy as companies that are building AI to maximize money. So just keep that in mind. Maximizing money is not as sexy as maximizing ethics or philosophy within AI. So how do we make ethics and philosophy of AI as sexy, if not sexier, than making money? Just to make sure that everything goes smooth moving forward. So I think OpenAI is very important in that aspect. And we're trying to get some people from them on simulation. So I think this last one's pretty big, so I'm going to have to spend a decent amount of time on it. It's SpaceX, of course. And SpaceX is incredible. I mean, without a doubt, it has helped move humanity in one of the most important directions possible, which is space colonization. And most people know the story of how Elon failed so many times leading up to 3 times leading up to his 4th launch, and he was out of money, and it worked. And now he's reusing rockets, which is amazing. He's having them land after they go and drop off their payload. So, and what are we putting in those payloads? We're putting these commercial resupply missions back to the International Space Station. We're putting satellites into orbit around the Earth that are doing things like giving us communication ability, giving us ability to maneuver around on maps, so like mapping Earth. So not only do we have GPS, global positioning satellites, but we have communication satellites and we have mapping of the Earth. And I don't know if you've seen some of the satellite imageries. I would highly recommend looking up Daily Overview. It's our friend Benjamin Grant. He's on Instagram. Go look that up, Daily Overview. It's fantastic. And these satellite images of Earth, they're really macroscopically awakening because you get to see the Earth from this new perspective. And there's tons of other information that is really important to know that we get from these top-down views. Weather patterns, predicting weather is really important for us, especially to evacuate people that are closer to hurricane zones or monsoon zones, etc. And then we have obviously communications, the way that we talk to each other. So that's obviously tremendously important to continue doing. So resupplying the ISS with new projects, with new equipment, with food, with projects, with all this cool stuff, with additional parts to the ISS that they can add on. So that's fuel for the ISS. So this all crucial, these commercial resupply missions. And it's crucial for moving us further into the space perspective, into the cosmic perspective. Now I think I'm going to touch on a point that's a little bit, this again, it's not talked about enough. It's that we're going to Mars. And Mars is great, and so is the Moon. These are great places to go and put humans, put robots first, have the robots build up the environments for the humans to come and live on. So this is a good path, obviously, forward to colonizing the cosmos. At the same time, I don't think we're talking enough about what's going to happen as we're getting there and when we get there. Because initially, about the last almost 2 years now, 2 years ago, I decided, thanks to my friend Jackson, that I was going to write a book called Mars Race. And I had written 6 drafts of that book, and I didn't end up publishing it. It wasn't done anyway. But the fact that I was so convinced that it was so important to write a book about the philosophy and ethics of this process was enough for me to really want to bring it to the world. Now I'm working on a different book that I think is more important, more to the heart, which we'll talk about in a separate video. Right now it's called Knowledge, Time, and the Human Race. And so, okay, take into account this. So you're going to Mars. Perfect shirt for it, by the way. On your way to Mars, you have China that's right behind you, because there's only a certain window, about every 26 months, I think it is, that you can launch a spacecraft to Mars without, while the orbits of Earth and Mars are aligned, that you can shoot off and get there. So, because obviously you're not going to, if the star is here, you're not going to, Mars is here, Earth is here, you're not going to launch a spacecraft to Mars. It doesn't work that way. So, and that's also the same thing for communicating between Earth and Mars. If Earth and Mars are here and the sun's in between, it's more difficult to talk. So, I believe it's a couple minute delay. I think it's about 4-minute delay or 5-minute delay or something like that in terms of timing of communication if they're next to each other. So if Earth is here and Mars is here and then the sun is here, then that's only a 4-minute delay. But then you think about how compounded it would be if they were much further away from each other. All right, how much more multiplied it would be. Okay, so as we talk about this, it's like, what happens when China's behind the US? What happens when Russia's behind China? What happens when India's coming as well, or European Union, or Japan, or South America? What happens when other countries realize that we're sending our best and our brightest people that are willing to go, and that the best and the brightest land from all these different countries, and then are they going to be fighting over land or resources? Some kid even asked Elon like a day or two ago, at a conference about like, yo, Elon, is there going to be some interplanetary warfare going on? And Elon very carefully was like, no, like there's probably some war that might happen because we've had a lot of war, but there's plenty of resources in space and on Mars. But at the same time, like, humans are at the most primal sort of way wanting to colonize as much shit as possible and for themselves. So right now I've been doing a lot of thinking in my head, and if you really drop down to your heart, so if we take a breath and slow down and think about it with our heart, with our feeling, we feel into the earth and we feel into ourselves and we feel into how we should go together. We should go to Mars together, right? There's this whole thing that he said that, oh, like you hold hands and cross the finish line at the Olympics, right? That's actually not a good analogy, because we're not saying hold hands and cross the finish line together. It's more like, okay, whoever is able to financially and intellectually afford to put all the pieces together to go there, great. Let's figure out how to bring a couple other of people behind you that are also intelligent and have enough to help make it happen, especially for other countries on Earth that don't have the resources right now to start space programs. So there's probably some good philosophies that you can learn from some maybe African countries, South American countries that don't have the financial resources right now to build rocket companies and send them to Mars. So these sorts of ways to figure out how to work together are absolutely crucial. So when talking about Mars, just really think about how we're going to collaborate and get there together. Think about that. How are we going to collaborate and get there together and work together? We do not want some Mars-Earth issues. Smart people go to Mars, smart people look back at Earth and see a bunch of conflict. Then why the fuck would they ever want to engage with us? We look like a bunch of stupid monkeys at that point. So how do we work together between Mars and Earth, especially as we send people? This is a conversation not for now, for today, because it's going to be in 10 years. This is actually going to be a serious conversation by 2028. So to be talking about it now is early, and early is good in this situation because we're trying to figure things out and prepare ourselves for the future. And if that was the case, then we wouldn't have as so many of the issues that we have today, if we would just be a little bit more forward thinking and a little bit more careful about repercussions and stop being so short term, but look at things long term. Thank you, Long Now Foundation, for helping us think in the long term. A lot of our friends are there. So I think that maybe experiences, we just had Rak Razum on the show today as well, speaking about 5-MeO DMT and these psychedelic and spiritual awakenings and experiences that really help us dip into the oneness, dip into our hearts and dip into the feeling. And when we do, we realize, oh crap, we have a lot of problems on Earth that we still need to fix. We have a lot of actualization to do for ourselves and for our collective. And then we're going to go and colonize the cosmos together at the same time, figure out exactly how to do that. So I really want to be careful to not have a class-based speciation. I think this is a crucial topic that we talk about a lot on the show, and I hope it resonates with people. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But by economic status, if we speciate, we'll actually, I think, have somewhat of an issue moving forward, because if you have very wealthy people and very poor people, there's not much incentive for very poor people to do anything, and there's not much incentive for very rich people to do anything about the very poor people, while very poor people don't have access to clean water, clean food, clean shelter, clean air, education or healthcare, any of these basic necessities that they need. So food for thought is make sure that as technology exacerbates wealth inequality, that there is some sort of a way to look back at people at the lower SES and uplift them faster than what's going on right now, even faster. The gap's like this. The gap's like this. How do we bring the gap to like that, so that the wealthy still keep getting wealthier, but the bottom has moved up? So that's part of the book that we're writing. All right, we're coming to the end of the time. Thanks for tuning in and listening about what's going on with what's happening in the Elon Musk world, and in kind of my thoughts around what's going on in the Elon Musk world. So again, we talked about VTOL and the potential that could be a better source for us moving forward of transit than potentially boring and Hyperloop, and maybe just figuring out how to speed up airplane transit via airplanes as well. So just think about that. Think about more design and engineering and getting the numbers out there for people to really study and figure out VTOL versus underground transit or above ground vacuum transit. Then also, think about the Jetsons, like nuclear fusion powering these hovercrafts that are zooming through the air super quickly, individual transit. Like, that sounds better, really. That sounds a lot better. How do we get there faster? And of course, making sure these hubcaps don't fall off and cut people's throats off. Well, the same thing's true about AI in cars right now, is that how do you know you're sleeping in the back? The AI is not going to just swerve off the road and kill you, right? Or kill someone else. So also, I talked about Neuralink and OpenAI, the importance of having them conversations about friendly AI moving forward, and AI safety and security moving forward, and also brain computer interfaces and how to trust the people that bring in other ethics and programmers and philosophers into the conversations. That's so crucial moving forward with BCIs, and they're almost inevitable that we're going to be using them. And lastly, about SpaceX, like, continue colonizing the cosmos, super important, but figuring out how to work together in that process and not cause a class-based speciation in that process is really, really crucial. How do we get it from here for wealth inequality to here? I think it's a really good way of understanding it and looking at it. So, all right, we are done with our time. Thanks for watching this Thoughts on Elon Musk video. Greatly appreciate it. If you thought it was useful, share it with other people. That's crucial. We're trying to grow our following, trying to join us, subscribe with us, give us a comment below with your thoughts, give us a like as well, and build something with this. We always say this content isn't just for consumption, it's for creation. So take this content and go write your own thoughts about one of the things that we talked about here, or go make a video about some of the thoughts, or go and talk to someone else about the thoughts. Maybe start a business, maybe start a VTOL business, figure out how you can do that. Or it's, again, these are things that are unsexy, right? It's unsexy for AIs that are friendly and safe, and it's more sexy for AIs that make money. So we need to really figure out how to make safe and secure things more sexy and less about the money being sexy. So go build, go create. And that's it. That's it. Join me on Patreon. Join us here. Help us grow this project. If you find this useful, we would greatly appreciate your help. And thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys soon.
Cut to a page. Don't kill your stream yet because you'll cut the whole video off.
All right, I'm cutting to...
Go to 5 for a while, and I'll let you know when to kill
I'm
the stream.
cutting to 5 now. All right. And I'm cutting...
It's still streaming. It's still...
That's fine.
A delay. If you kill it, it's going to...
Last time it didn't do that with Jordan Peterson, though.
Okay, try.
All right.